Here today. Just ran in from the gorgeous sunshine outside, and I'm joined today by our farm leaders, Francie Gorman from the IFA, Denis Drennan from the ICMSA, and of course Sean McNamara from the ICSA. Thank you for joining us today, and I know you're under pressure to be elsewhere. It's a busy day, the first day of the ploughing for you. But Francie, I might go to you first. We're here at the ploughing today, which is traditionally known as a place to press the flesh, as they say, and never has that been more pertinent now than the budget just around the corner and a general election, some might say in weeks, but certainly within the next few months. So what are you expecting from Budget 2025, for example, Francie, for farmers?
What I'm hoping for farmers, number one, is that the zoned residential land tax will be sorted. We've been promised this for a couple of years now since it came in. The idea that farmers are going to be asked to de-zone their land to get out of it is not good enough. There needs to be a carve-out, and anybody that's genuinely farming their land have to be exempted. We're looking for supports for the vulnerable sectors. Look, the tillage sector is hugely challenged, the beef and sheep sector, and in general the cost of doing business. And our chief economist, Ty Buckley, has done an analysis and a piece around that to coincide with the ploughing match. It shows costs on farm up 73% over the last 6 years. Income's down 34%. And if you look at the dairy sector, where there's been huge investment, cost of doing business and regulation in that sector is crippled at the moment, and they're the issues that need to be addressed for me in the short term.
Denis Drennan then from the ICMSA. It has been a challenging year for all farmers, but dairy farmers in particular this year seem to be struggling under the weight of environmental targets. Now there's a European Commission delegation in Ireland at the moment to review everything in relation to our nitrates and water quality and so on. And is there any optimism among dairy farmers at the moment that they will be able to retain the current nitrates derogation we have?
Well, I think it's a huge challenge, but I think it's a challenge that's been met head-on by farmers. I think when you look at the likes of the ASAP programme and the engagement that's there, even though it's a voluntary programme, the carrying out of actions that have been agreed with the Law Pro and the ASAP advisors, that's hugely positive. The new EIP with 65 million to carry out some of those actions, that was a stumbling block. Finance was obviously a stumbling block with carrying out some of those measures. So, you know, the amount of enforcement, I suppose, and the amount of adherence to policies and to new water regulations to protect the water quality in the country, I think farmers are really embracing that now and realise that, you know, okay, we've a phenomenal industry in the country of producing milk and meat, and we're probably the most sustainable in the world at doing that, but we have to do it in that little bit better way, and everybody seems to be with their shoulder to the wheel to make sure that we see an improvement in water quality and we secure the derogation, because we have a 17 billion euro indigenous industry in the country with a multiplier effect that's putting over 40 billion into the rural economy. So we can't even imagine if that indigenous industry is affected. You know, so we have to make sure rural Ireland will die a death without that money being injected into it. Like, I mean, the multiplier effect from agriculture is double what it is from pharma or tech, and it's the only option in town for a lot of parts of rural Ireland. So we have to make sure that we do everything possible, and I think everybody's engaging in a very positive manner to make sure that the derogation is retained.
I feel like the engagement is certainly there from the farming community, and they're all getting on board with the environmental targets. I think probably the challenge is to do within the time frame that the European Commission wants. And let's just call a spade a spade. They're not the most forgiving in terms of giving flexibility around timelines.
Well, I think that's where the visit of the officers from the European Commission is vital at the moment, and they're really getting out on our farms. Like when the Commissioner came last year, it was really just a fly-by-night visit, came in, met people and left. But like, they're getting an in-depth look of what's actually happening on farms and also what's happening in the agriculture catchment programme that gives us a better understanding of how actually the science is working and what measures and when they're implemented, the difference that they make. You know, so it's a really in-depth look, and they can see for themselves, like seeing is believing. So they can see the actual measures that have been taken out by farmers on the ground to improve the water quality, but also, you know, there's the better realisation by them that there is a time lag from when a measure is put in place to when that delivers. And even Law Pro will admit that there's about a 4-year gap between when a measure is implemented and you see a chemical change in a water body, and then a further 2 years until there's a biological change. And it's the biological change that we're being that's being looked of us. So it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Yeah. And we need every sector, not just farming, to put their shoulder to the wheel to improve water quality.
Sean McNamara from the ICSA, your organisation has described the cuts to farmers' incomes this year as savage. And you've been calling on the government to do something. We may or may not have a new government in the next 4 to 5 months. What can they do to support farmers who have suffered, as you said, these savage cuts in farm income, when they are certainly restricted by, I suppose, the criteria of the Common Agricultural Policy and the funding that's coming from Europe?
We in ICSA is looking for a substantial increase in the suckler cow premium in €300. We're also looking for €35 premium for sheep. But all these schemes, they're no longer working. Like, you know what I mean? There's so much to do to get these schemes. We want to see a far simpler scheme that farmers can take a part in. Like, we see only about 15 or 20% of the suckler farmers taking part in the suckler scheme for the simple reason of all the things you have to go through. Like, we see it in our own sector, in the suckler sector, in the sheep sector. There's no young people to come into the sector for the simple reason is there's no viable living there anymore. And like, any young person that has a job is not going to come back to farm and not make a viable living. Simple reason, they can earn a lot more in a job. They're not going to get up at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning to start calving cows or lambing ewes. They want an easier lifestyle. They want to finish their Friday evening at 6 o'clock or finish work at 4 o'clock in the evening. And that's the way the young people sees it. And unless we, as older farmers, and the government gets behind farmers and make sure that farmers has a viable living and a fair price of the product, at least a fair price of the product, we have no business. Farmers going to be in dire straits in a very short time, and we're going to run into as I call it, a disaster. We're going to run into serious food security problems in the next couple of years.
Francie, I'll just come back to you. It's very easy today, on a gorgeous day like today in Rathneska, to look around. People will see on news bulletins throughout the day, aren't the farmers having a great day out in the sunshine in Down County Laois today? Very short memories of 2 days ago when it nearly rained enough in a day for a month. And most of this year has been really, I suppose, just a downpour in many, many areas. Grass growth has been impacted. Then there's obviously the impact for tillage farmers as well. What sort of tangible impacts for people who maybe don't even come from a farming background? Forget about the sunshine today, which is beautiful and we're grateful for it here. But what about the impact of the weather on farming in this country over the last 9 months?
Oh, it's been massive. I mean, it's not just 9 months. It probably goes back to the autumn of 2022, directly after the plough match. Winter crops didn't get in. Fellas were forced to sow. Less profitable spring crops the following year. We had challenging weather basically from then to now, and it's increased cost of production across all sectors at farm level, and I think that's culminated in a cash flow issue at farm this year that we haven't seen for a while, and while it's not endemic on all farms and not going to be there long term, some farms are going to be challenged long term about it, and I think as the year goes on, cuts to the supports coming through in October and the basic payment are going to be very, very stark in people's bank accounts when they get them and before the end of the year. And I can see it becoming an even bigger problem. And that's why we need our government to step up to the mark and support it. As I said earlier, the cost of doing business analysis that we've done, that lays it quite clear to the government where agriculture, the fat that's been taken out of the system over the last 5 or 6 years, and it hasn't been replaced by a pro rata increase in the product price that we're getting enough. All right, beef, dairy, sheep in particular, not going too bad this year, but all that margin's been eroded by an increase in the cost of production, and it's regulation as well. And we spoke about the nitrates directive earlier on, and in addition to all the points that Denis made, we're working together as farm organisations with the ICMSA, with McAra, with DII and MII, and we launched a common document this week on it. But there's going to be a political impediment on whoever is Taoiseach leading this country to go out and fight it as put on the jersey and make the point to them out there that our grass-based agriculture livestock system here is unique. It gives us an advantage that other countries in Europe don't have. It's our car industry. It's our aircraft industry. And if the aircraft industry or the car industry was being challenged the same way in Germany and France, they get delivery on it. So we need our Taoiseach to step up to the plate here and back up what we're doing at farm level. There's a lot been done at farm level, but politically, there's an impediment on the Taoiseach of the day to lead a national effort through government to ensure that we hold on to that derogation.
I might just go back to Sean on that. I mean, you're talking about the importance of farming and production agriculture in this country and how it's intrinsic to our economy. But you mentioned their food security, Sean. Like, do you think that there is maybe not a connection out there in the general public about the role that Irish farmers play in, ensuring food security around the world? And famine is becoming more prevalent, particularly in third world countries. And what we do every day, inside the farm gate.
Yeah, well, see, food security is going to become a big issue. And the simple reason is, like, everyone, it doesn't matter whether you're from a farm or what you're from, the farmer is producing the food and you're depending on the farmer 3 times a day to get your food. And, like, we have to look at in 4 or 5 years' time if farming is no longer viable. Like, at the moment, export markets is very good, serious markets out of Morocco. And the reason for that, part of the reason, but the other reason for that is that food in Morocco, Italy and all the other foreign countries is scarce. And they're bringing boatloads of cattle out from Ireland out there to feed their population. Now you have to remember, if we stop, like we've seen the suckler herd falling this year by 40,000, if this keeps continuing year in, year out, you're not going to have as much stock there. There won't be as much food there. And then food security at that stage will be a big issue. We'd have nothing to export. We'd have no export markets. There'd be a lot less jobs in this country. The department, everything, factories, it'd have to close. Everything would happen. And like, it'd be serious in 4 or 5 years' time if it keeps going on the way it is. Like I says, we need a viable living. And that's what we're all fighting for in every farm organisation, is that farmers make a viable living.
Finally, I'll just go to Denis before I let you go, as I know you have an appointment with Uachtar on Éireann. But Denis, in terms of future viability, like there's a lot of kids here in the ploughing today and they're coming with mum and dad and they farm every day with mum and dad. Like, what's the future looking like for farmers in this country?
Look, I suppose at the present moment in time, we're stuck in an absolute perfect storm. We have a collapse in farm income, let it be whatever sector it is. Dairy farming that we represent is back 69%. We've a huge issue with the amount of rules and regulations being enforced on farmers. Farmers are willing to do, but we need to make sure that we minimise those but still deliver a result. We've a huge income volatility problem, and it's something that we've campaigned for about 10 years now with the government. The government had it included in their programme for government this time. They've one budget left to deliver that. I mean, what young person will look at a sector and say, right, I'm going to go in and my income is going to be here this year, here the next year, up, down, up, down. We need an income volatility tool to take the rough with the smooth and take the bumps out of it. Because any young person that's looking at agriculture as an industry, they still have their mortgage to pay every month, they still have their shopping to do every week, they still have their ESB bill, their car loan. They need a stable income. Yeah. That's what they need. And I mean, people are walking, they're walking away from the industry. Yeah. If you look at the amount of people that are exiting farming this year, or planning on exiting farming, if you look at the CSO application rate, we have a 16% drop in people applying to do agricultural courses. We have a drop off on the number of people attending agricultural colleges. So, if there was any other sector that saw that drop in income, if it was a tech or the pharma, it would be a national emergency to try and solve it. But, the government seems to be sitting back and allowing this to happen and say, well, there'll always be farmers. But I think we need to get the message out there. There won't always be farmers unless there's a viable income and a steady income for farmers.
True. We have to leave it there, unfortunately. You have an appointment with, as I said, the Uachtar. I want to thank Francie Gorman from the IFA, Denis Drennan from ICMSA and Sean McNamara from ICSA for joining us on the panel today. We're here at the Ploughing Championships and it is indeed a ploughing competition as well. In case anyone didn't know, they're out tilling the field. So we'll head on over to the Agriland team who are out and about at the moment.